Hey Nathan, how are you doing? I'm glad that you're joining me on Facebook Live today. Fantastic. Um, so the subject is King's College London. I've even got my King's College KCL T-shirt on, and you were asking me about what it's like to go to school there, and the fact that I'm doing the PhD at the Department of War Studies through distance learning and the like. And so what I thought would be the best way to go about this is for me to basically tell you my story about how I got interested in King's, the application process, and I'll move on and go into what it's like to be a part-time distance learning student. I had to crack a lot of this code as I went along, as I approached the university, the college, and it is fascinating because their way of doing PhD, doing higher education, is different than it is in the United States. I first became interested in King's when I was at, when you and I first met each other, when I was an instructor at National Defense Intelligence College. I had met at least one other faculty member that had gone to King's. I had heard about it from a couple of folks, and it just seemed like a great school, and especially in the Department of War Studies, it seemed like the things that they were putting down was exactly what I was interested in. So I'd gone to the website naturally. I looked at the college, and I found a lot of things that, for me, hit all the right marks. The first one is King's has a worldwide reputation, a fantastic reputation. In the United Kingdom, they call it part of the Golden Triangle, the other two parts being Oxford and Cambridge. It's always ranked high among universities throughout the world. Recently, it was ranked, I think, 16th in the world. And it's because it just has across the board in all departments, fabulous faculty. The amenities there, the facilities are fantastic. It's just a great, great university. It's part of the University of London, and it's right there in the heart of London. There's a couple of campuses. There's the Strand is the main campus where the Department of War Studies and where some of the other schools are. There's also a Guy's campus, which is across the river on the southern side of the Thames. And then I think there's a campus called St. Thomas that I don't think I've been to. I've been to both the Guy's campus and the Strand. And so what I love about it is when you walk through all the buildings and the facilities, I mean, it feels like what you would imagine a British university would be. But then as you walk off campus, you're right there, downtown London. So I think it's fabulous. So as I was cracking the code and how to get into the program, I actually ended up connecting with an American who was living in London and had started his program in the Department of War Studies, but he was moving to another part of Europe and was continuing his studies. And I was flummoxed and flabbergasted by the fact that you didn't have to be on campus. And this is how he explained it to me, and I've passed this on to others. And he said, you have to think about it like this. The PhD program for a research PhD is it doesn't have any coursework. So what happens is in the UK model, and in fact, I've discovered it's only in the United States that we have a taught model only. A taught model is we teach 5 years of coursework, you take comps, you prepare your dissertation, and you do that. And it normally includes a component of teaching on campus because in the US, when you're going after a PhD, what you're technically doing is applying to join the guild of that field of expertise. So in the UK, and apparently throughout the world, most university systems have two paths, a taught model similar to that, and that's intended for those folks who are entering into the field new because they've never worked in that field before, or a classic undergrad right into graduate PhD program. So a person who doesn't necessarily have experience and therefore are meeting that requirement through education. But for a person like yourself, Nathan, and like myself, I've had 25 years, in the field, and I had 5 years of teaching in the field. And so for me, I'm the kind of guy that it's going to sound arrogant, but I don't need to go through 5 years of coursework in order to tackle and to prepare for my dissertation. So the notion is basically for someone like yourself or myself, the idea is that basically a research PhD is go right to the dissertation. You go to the dissertation phase. Now, here's the challenging wicket in making sure that you can do that. As part of your application process, what you have to do is you have to submit your dissertation proposal and have them accept your dissertation proposal as part of the process. Now, for me, I was fortunate. I was able to do that basically in one shot. And so what's ironic is because I had taught at National Defense Intelligence College, and if you remember, one of the courses I taught was the thesis writing seminar. And so after 5 years of teaching other folks how to prepare and write their thesis, I took that experience and used that in preparing my own dissertation approach. And so I wrote up my proposal for my dissertation, and I got connected with the professor that I was hoping to have as my advisor, Andrew Lambert. And I ended up going there, and I sent him an email, and I said, could I come and interview with him in person? So I flew out there. I mailed him the dissertation proposal ahead of time. I sent him a CV. I flew out and I met with him. And naturally, my hope was that he would agree to take me on as his, as his student. And I learned a couple of things. So first, naturally, the advisor's got to be interested in the topic that you're writing about. And the second thing is they have to be able to carry you as far as the number of students that they have. And I remember him sort of doing quick math in his head and saying, so if you join me in the spring, or if you apply in the spring and you start in the fall, I do have two students that are graduating. He said, okay. And he said he would take me on. So I was very fortunate that it was the advisor that I wanted to connect with. He was interested enough in my topic and what I was going to do. And he had the ability to take me on because he was soon going to have the space on his schedule, as it were, to handle additional students. I think they're only allowed to carry 8 students at a time, each of the advisors there. So my advice to you is, first, determine what your dissertation is going to be. Second, write up a proposal and follow that model that you did at NDIC. And then go onto the King's website and see if you can find a professor that seems to have your area of expertise or your area of interest. So what to do is if you go on their website, on the Department of War Studies page, it lists all of the professors. And you go and they will say on their particular individual page what their area of interest is. So you sit down with them and you say, hey, my area of interest is, whatever the topic is. In my case, it was naval history, Operation Unearthed Will. You find that person, and then I would do as I did. Send them an email, tell them that you're interested, and see if they'll take you on. Now, I have talked to other students about our experiences, and in doing that, what I found out was there are some folks that spent 2 years developing their proposal with their professor before they actually applied to the college. Isn't that amazing? So they basically went round and round and talked about what their approach was going to be and how they were going to do it and everything else. And so as a result of that, I found that part of the application process can be more daunting. I think I benefited from the fact that I taught thesis writing for 5 years. So I think that made my dissertation proposal all the more stronger. So now once you start, let's talk about the process of what happens now that you're a blended distance learning student. So think about this. Because you're doing your dissertation, you're in the dissertation phase of your PhD, in effect. You're doing a research PhD, and I'm going to keep saying that. I have said this to folks several times, is they'll talk about, oh, but taking classes or whatever, and I'll say, nope, I'm a research PhD student. In fact, in the UK, they actually call it, I think in the UK, the term used is you're a PhD researcher. They actually won't use the word student. So when I'm in the UK, they will refer to me as, they'll say, Stephen Phillips is a PhD researcher, or he's a researcher. And so what I say to folks is I say, it's like I'm in the dissertation phase of my PhD. I've validated, in effect, the 5 years of coursework. So think about this. Even here in the United States, when folks are working on their dissertation, they will often leave campus, right? They'll spend 5 years on campus, they're teaching or whatever, and then they'll say, okay, I'm going to leave campus. And they work on their dissertation while they're already going to do their next job, right? They taught for 5 years, they had fun, they're going into some other form of the workspace, and maybe it's that they're going into a teaching experience someplace else, but they often will leave campus while they're doing their dissertation. In other fields of endeavors, people are doing their research. Sometimes their research takes them off to go and do something, right? They have to go someplace to finish up and do their research as they're writing up their PhD. So as a result, I don't need to be on campus, especially since my topic is the American history topic. I'm doing my research here in the Washington Navy Yard, in the National Archives. I haven't done any interviews yet, but when I do interviews, I'm going to be doing interviews of Americans because mine is a U.S. Navy history topic. So that means, therefore, if I don't have to be on campus, I'm able to do it from a distance here in the United States. Now, Is there some interaction on campus? Do you have to go on campus from time to time? Well, certainly. So it works like this. So first, you have to show up in the fall in September. And I think it was, in fact, the last 2 weeks of September for orientation. And it is exactly what you think it is. It's exactly like going to orientation at any other university. I was there along with the freshmen and along with new graduate students and everything. But so it was funny as I was walking around the Department of War Studies. There I was, I've got a beard. I'm wearing it. The first day I dressed up. I had a jacket and a bow tie and bag over my shoulder. I had students come up to me and go, "Excuse me, sir, where's room K, 123?" And I'd say, "I'm a student too." I actually went and did a school visit. I flew in one time, and this was when I went and interviewed with the prof. I actually flew in a couple of days ahead of time, and I went in one day and I did the school tour just like a student does, right? I was a prospective student, and so there I was. As you can imagine, most of the folks on the visit, it was like parents and their soon-to-be freshmen kids, and me. I look like dirty old man in the back with with a beard. And I think the woman finally, people were like trying to figure out, like, is he attached to one of these groups of people? Who is this dude? And finally, the woman saw like the body language and realized what happened. She was like, "Oh, and I think we have a PhD student here too." And I was like, "Yes, I'm going to be a PhD student. I'm not, whatever. I'm not stalking your kid." So I found that humorous. And as you can imagine, there are PhD students that are older than me. Most of the PhD students are, I mean, they're a mix. There are some that clearly are folks who've come right from an undergraduate experience. Most of them, I would say, are mid-career. They're like yourself. But there were some that are even older than me. I mean, there's a couple of them that were, there was one gentleman who was in his 60s. So, but so you start your 2 weeks of orientation, and it's exactly what you imagine it would be. It's getting yourself settled into the routine, and you're there with all of the students who are starting the program at the same time as you are. So we were a mix of students who are going to be distance learning students, and some of them that are going to be on campus. Now, if you're doing on campus, most of those folks will knock it out, I think, in like 3 years. And if you do blended distance learning, it's thought of as a part-time program, and so you have 6 years to do it. So you have a little bit longer period of time to knock it out. Now, so you do that 2 weeks of orientation, and then what happens is, and they explain this to you at orientation, naturally, you have to have regular interaction with your supervisor, but in the modern world, we can do this, right? I don't know if this type of program would have worked 10 years ago or maybe 20 years ago. But the reason it works now is I can get on the phone. I can Skype with my professor. I can send him an email. If we wanted to, we could time it, and I could get on the phone and make a phone call. And so I have interaction with him from time to time via email. But even if you don't have a need of your professor, you don't have anything specific, you have certain wickets that you have to hit along the way to make sure that you're making the progress that you need to. And basically what it is at the end of each semester, you have a form that you and your professor fill out, and it's like your progress report where you say, "This is what I've done to date, this is where my progress is, this is what I'm doing, this is what my next step plan is." And so it's taking a pulse. Here's where I'm at, here's where I'm going. And as long as your professor is satisfied at that point that everything's going fine, you keep moving forward and it's all good. So in my case, my professor, his big thing was, he said, "Steve, do your research, do your writing. When you get to a point where you have something that I can read, send it to me, and I'll read it and review it, and we'll keep moving forward." And so for me, I'm just over 1 year in the program, and thus far, that's where I'm going. So that's your end of each semester. You've got to hit that wicket, turn that in order to keep moving forward. Now, there are other milestones that you have to hit. There's a milestone that they call the Viva or the upgrade. And if you look at a calendar, if you look at it written in stone on the website, it would suggest that it is done at about 1 year if you're a full-time student, and then by definition, it sort of implies 2 years if you're a part-time blended distance learning student. I've come to learn that they're a little bit relaxed with it in reality, that there are some students that are full-time that take 18 months before they get to that point. I think I'm going to do it at about 18 months, so I think I'm going to do mine ahead of time. And what it is it's sort of like having a murder board of what you've done to date. And what's required is that at that point, you've at least turned in 20,000 words of your dissertation. Dissertation is supposed to be around 100,000 words. In fact, I think they say not to exceed 100,000 words. And I think the gouge I've gotten is like So if it's 75,000, you're probably not there. But if you're at 92,000, you're probably going to be okay. So they want this to be, to demonstrate a lot of work. But I guess they don't want the verbosity of this thing, a 200,000 word volume kind of a thing. So as you're doing that, as you turn in the 20,000 words, you have an advisor and you have a second advisor also. But then the folks who evaluate you are other folks at the school. And so in some ways, it's a little bit of a check on you and your advisor that you're moving forward properly. So it makes sure that they're doing it. So they go to the board almost as your advocate that, hey, I think the student is moving forward properly. So what you do is you go to the board, they read your 20,000 words ahead of time, or at least you turn it in ahead of time. You sit down with them and they have, as you can imagine, they're going to ask you questions, so, where are you going next? Part of what you turn in also is your calendar of like how I'm going to proceed moving forward. Where are you going to go to next? How are you going to do this? Have you thought about this? Are you going to tackle this? And they might criticize what you've done today. We're not exactly sure that you've unpacked this particular thing. We think that needs to have more work done, et cetera, et cetera. So the end of that Viva or the end of that upgrade has about, I think, like 4 potential responses to it. One is the classic, hey, so you've passed and you can move forward, but we want you to make some changes first. And after you make those changes, come back again, and then we'll let you move forward. Move forward is you are now, you've been quote unquote upgraded and you're fully recognized as a PhD student. And at that point, you're actually allowed to start teaching. So for the students who are on campus, some of them do use that as an opportunity to start teaching at King's also. So then another option is they can say, you've done really good work, but we just don't think this is a PhD project. We think that you're falling short a little bit. So here's what we're going to let you do. We're going to let you finish this, but you're going to finish it, and it's going to be a master's degree, not a PhD. And then, of course, the lower end of the scale is, you know what, thanks for playing. It's been really nice knowing you, and you're just done. We just don't, this is not up to snuff. Now, so ostensibly, if you get a great advisor and they serve as your advocate, what they're going to do is they're going to make sure that you're ready for that when the time comes. And I think I have an advantage. I'm certain that you do too. I think for most of us that are mature students and who've been in this world before and who write a lot in our work, it is just a matter of doing the work and making sure that you present and get them what they want. In my case, one of the things, if you remember, I always said to the students whenever they were developing their thesis is, it's not enough to sort of explore the topic and then write about the topic and regurgitate it back to the audience, to your readers. My thing was always, you have to have some form of analysis involved and tell us what your analysis is, because that's what makes a stronger thesis. So I had done that in my own thesis, and I did it in this dissertation. What I said was I was going to take, is it Jervis's hypothesis of misperception? I think it's either 8 or 14 hypotheses of misperception. And what I did was I'm modifying them because they were written for like strategic level view and national security level stuff. I've modified those for strategic, tactical, and operational level of war for the U.S. Navy. And so part of my exercise that I did in my first chapter, which I've already turned in, I gave some background on it, and I had an appendix where I literally said, so Jervis's hypothesis number 1 is this, and here's how I've modified hypothesis number 1 so that it fits for this naval history topic. And my advisor accepted that. For me, that was huge. Once he's accepted your research methodology and your analytical method, I think you're off to the races. Now, there's other opportunities for you to go on campus naturally and interface and interact with the students, and I have done that also. So here's an example. So theoretically, I'm sorry, let me back up to the PhD. So Nathan, then the next time you go on campus is to go and actually defend your dissertation. And again, exactly what you would imagine. You're going to send the materials in ahead of time. Your advisor, the second chair, the second advisor, probably 1 or 2 other folks are going to be there. And you walk in and you're going to defend your dissertation, and they're going to ask you a lot of sharp questions, and you're going to answer them brilliantly, and they walk out the door and come back. And again, just like any other board, I can imagine a situation where they would say, okay, you need to make a couple changes. We want you to address this question or concern, but you got the upcheck, you're done. And so you make those changes, you round it out, and you get your PhD, and you now have graduated from, King's College London. Knock on wood. We hope that's what happens. So there are other opportunities to go to campus and be on campus. You're a student at King's College. You're recognized to have a student ID and the whole nine yards. So there are first lectures and events that you can attend. And so what I get an email on a regular basis from them, and they'll say, we have a lecture series that's happening. We have this event that's happening this week. Do you want to come? And so the one that I did attend, I've only done this once, but there's a PhD conference every spring. And what happens is all the PhD students who are interested, I don't know how many PhD students there are, but there were probably about 60 who participated in this conference. And what they said was, we're going to have a 2-day conference where they'll have panels, and the folks are basically presenting their PhD work to date, and then the audience would ask questions. And so for that, they also wanted to do some academic topics. So I actually said, I'm not ready to present any of my PhD, but they wanted a panel on publishing. And I said, well, I've published, so I'll talk about publishing. So I was on that panel. And then I volunteered to be co-chair for a panel of 3 students that were talking about their topics, and myself and one of the profs were co-chairs. And so they did the thing, you've seen this at other venues. Each one got up, talked about their topic for about 30 minutes, sat down, and then we had a series of questions, and we guided questions, and then we garnered questions from the audience, that kind of thing. So it was fun. It was nice to see what other people were doing. It was fun to be on campus. It was nice to meet other folks that are going through the process at the same time as I am. I got connected with students who I'd gone through orientation with. You know, when I went through orientation, actually, it was all the PhD students in the Department of War Studies who started at the same time that I did. Well, once I went to the PhD conference thing, as it turned out, there were students there that, you know, some of them were in their 3rd year, some of them in their, you know, they're all in different levels of the school. Some are about to finish, etc. So that was a lot of fun. And then it gave me another opportunity to meet with my advisor and do that sort of thing. You can still take courses, even though you're distance learning, and you can take courses that are offered through distance learning. And there's a wide variety of those that are offered at King's College. And there's one in particular that I'm going to recommend, and that's called AKC, or Associateship of King's College. And it's basically like an ethics and honor society. What happened was, when we went through orientation, they had a lecture on this, and the guy started off by saying, so there's this thing, it's called the Associateship of King's College. It's been part of the college since its inception. It's basically a process of taking a course that has to do, I would describe it as its ethics, its theology, and so you take the course, and then if you finish it, it takes 3 years. If you knock out the course in 3 years, you then can apply for and be recognized as a member of the Associateship of King's College. And you literally get letters after your name. And you know, the Brits are all about the letters after your name. So apparently if that happens when you graduate, then you become PhD, AKC, not American Kennel Club, and Associateship of King's College. And so while I was there, as they gave the lecture, they said, so for all of you who are foreigners and don't know this thing about the Brits and our letters and everything else, they were like, it's a thing, you know. So I was like, okay, so I'm doing that. And so the way that works is, it is a lecture that's recorded. They do the lecture on campus, I think on Tuesday. It's a different member of the theology department that gives the lecture each time. There were a couple of them that gave 2 lectures. Most of them just did one. And then I think they actually give it on campus twice during the week, maybe on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And then the Thursday one is videotaped and it's uploaded. And so I normally watched it here in my home on Thursday night. Sometimes it would cascade into the weekend, and I'd end up doing it on a Sunday evening or that sort of thing. And typically then had a quiz that you had to do online. But the quiz was sort of pass-fail. I don't think that went towards your grade or anything. But then at the end of the year, you had to write 2 essays, and they gave you like 12 questions, and you had to choose from the 12 questions 2 of them and write them and submit them. And they had a group of people that graded them, and then that, you know, determined whether you went forward. And I got a grade with merit, so I was very pleased with that. I think with merit is their second tier. I don't remember what the top one is, but with merit is good. So they have other courses that you can take, again, online. I think some of them are videotaped if you want to do the lectures remotely. Some of them are like research methodology. There was one that was on conducting interviews that I wanted to take, and that sort of a thing. So I'm going to wrap this up, Nathan, and say, so this can be done. It takes motivation by you as the individual person to go through the process. It takes a little bit of figuring out ahead of time what is my topic and can I find a professor who's interested in that topic. But there's a way to do it. And here's what I will say is the most surprising. This is my greatest concern and my most surprising aspect that I've come away from it feeling good, and that is I thought, am I really going to feel like I'm a King's College student that I'm doing most of my studies here in the U.S.? And you know what? I do. And I do in part because I have a regular interaction, even though it's online with folks that are there. And because when I go on campus, I've been on campus a number of times now. And so I don't feel like a stranger. I kind of know my way around and that kind of a thing. I've also found that I've talked to students who are actually there in the PhD program. And a lot of them have said like, yeah, so this was one of the students I talked to, a full-time student. He did start with me, but he's a guy who's in London doing this in the program in 3 years. He was at the PhD conference. And so I said to him, so, oh, I'm so jealous, man. You're here. You're in the library every day. You walk on campus. I said, dude, I can just imagine. You're here drinking coffee in the library, studying whatever. And he said, Steve, I've been on campus like 4 times this year. And I said, you're kidding. And he said, no. And he's like, I'm not taking classes. He's like, I come on campus when I have to see my advisor. So, it's interesting so my experience is not unlike folks who are actually there and on campus. So that was a lot right there, Nathan. And I know that you have something else that you need to get to. It looks like we've got almost 15 minutes. So why don't I kick it back to you, man, and say, what questions do you have? Yeah, very good question. So it was really, really hard for me to find it. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to look up online and see if I think I have it here in my folders. Um, and I will send this to you later. And what it is you have to go to the right page and you have to find this. It's a PDF file and then download it. And it tells you what all the costs are and everything else. And it is. It is not easy. It's not easy to find. My brain is telling me that it is about 46K US whole cloth, like done. And they get that number out of you no matter whether you do it part-time or full-time. So part-time, no surprise, is less. Full-time costs more. Yeah, give me a moment. I'm still looking. Yep. So I've just found the page. I'm looking to see my spreadsheet. I found it. Okay. Yeah. So it's about, if you go part-time, it's about $12,000 a year. When the whole thing is done, as you can imagine, it depends on the exchange rate. But when the whole thing is done, it's about it's about between $46,000 and $48,000. So I'm looking right now online. I'm not looking online. I'm looking on the spreadsheet. So the tuition, overseas part-time tuition, was £8,300, and that comes to, at the time, it came to $11,996. So about $12,000 a year. Yeah, yeah. So I think they're going to get about 45K out of you, whether you do it full-time or part-time. Now, if you get to the zone where you're called writing up, then it's like $400 a semester. So what writing up is, so let's say you get to the point that you've finished the dissertation, like you're really close. I think at that point and I think they do this even if you're, like, let's say you finish a semester early. I think what they do is they'll say, just give us $400 and you're quote unquote you're writing up. And I think also that you can also go past your time period. So let's say you're at 6 years and the professor says, listen, this guy is really close. He's just writing up. I think they can also do that and say, all right, so you're at 6 years and 6 months. Give us another $500, $400. You're writing up, and then you can finish out your thing after. We'll give you another 6 months to knock it out. Is what I'm saying. Yeah, I did not. And the reason I didn't was I really got attracted to King's because I wanted to do a naval history like PhD, and it was the closest thing for me. Now, am I going to say I didn't look at any of them? No, I won't say that. So I have a vague recollection that I looked at like Trinity College, which I believe is in Ireland. I think I perused Cambridge and Oxford, and I didn't see the programs that fit my needs, and it was twofold. It was I didn't see a part-time blended program, nor did I see that the exact academic field thing that I wanted to get into. So for King's, everything came together. It was everything that I wanted to do. Outstanding faculty and staff, the ability to do a distance learning, and the naval history aspect of what I wanted to do. Andrew Lambert, in my opinion, is one of the premier naval historians. He's probably the premier naval historian in the United Kingdom. Certainly one of the premier naval historians in the world. For me, there was nowhere else to go. That's who I wanted to be connected with. So for me, and then as a PhD guy, that's really for me what I wanted to do is I wanted to have an advisor. This PhD process for me is working on my dissertation underneath the guidance and advising of Andrew Lambert. And so that to me is what the PhD thing is. And that's where you have to get your mindset and to think, continue back to that notion that I was saying of it's, I'm past the coursework. I've validated the coursework. Whatever term you want to use, and I'm doing my dissertation. So now my dissertation is who do I want with me guiding me through this dissertation piece? Yeah, absolutely. No question about it. If you go and look, they have the wide spectrum of conflict. So if you remember, I taught a peacekeeping and stability operations course at NDIC. There's folks that are doing peacekeeping topics. There's folks that are doing nation building topics. If you go online and look at the topics that students are doing dissertations, and on the website they list some of those, that would be fine. If you can't go off and do something about medieval art, right? That's not going to fly. But 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 anything, right? Yeah, yeah. I think you're going to be fine with that topic. I think the only issue is going to be finding the right advisor for you. Absolutely. And Nathan, your brain was right where I was. So this is step one. I was about to use phase one, phase zero. This is step one, dude. We'll have more conversations about this, and if you're happy about it, I'll record it again, and then other people can benefit from it too. Hey, Nathan, I'm glad we've reconnected, man. All right. Well, I know that you got to go, so I'll say good night, and we'll catch up with you soon. All right. Bye.